Okay, we've just started the recording. So hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on Teaching Innovators, Embry-Riddle Worldwide's Innovative Teaching Grant. As a reminder, this session is a 40-minute session scheduled to end at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Time. The presenters will talk for the first 30 minutes or so, and then there will be time at the end for audience questions. This app will close at the end of the session, and you'll be able to access the lobby and other sessions in your internet browser. And the next session will begin at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I am thrilled to introduce the moderator for your session, Angie Atwell, who is the Executive Director of the Rothwell Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. Angie will introduce her panel of speakers during the presentation as well. So Angie, I will hand it to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I am thrilled to be here with this panel and to introduce our brand new Innovative Teaching Grant. So I just want to spend just a moment talking about the Innovative Teaching Grant before we introduce our grant awardees. The Innovative Teaching Grant is a brand new offering that was sponsored by the Strategic Initiative team for the university. And really what it does is it pairs someone from RCTLE, or in the case of Dr. Gennaro, RCTLE adjacent person with a full-time faculty member to partner around a scholarship of teaching and learning project. And so the goal here is to identify, adapt, and evaluate evidence-based instructional practices, advancing both institutional goals as well as the broader field of education. And of course, one of the greatest goals of a SOTL, or a Scholarship of Teaching and Learning project, is to disseminate your findings. And so this year, the Innovative Teaching Grant awardees had an abbreviated grant period. So they actually just started their projects in January. There may be some initial findings, but we look forward to opportunities to share, certainly with the Embry-Riddle community, but the larger educational community as a whole in the future. So without further delay, I'll introduce each SOTL group, each Innovative Teaching Grant partnership that includes both a full-time faculty member and the RCTLE member. And I'll give them a few minutes to describe what their project is. And then we have some scripted questions later on to go through and talk through their specific ideas and projects. So I'll start with Stefan Kleinke and Jillian Shiano, and they are looking at scenario-based hands-on group projects, and I'll pass it off to you, Stefan.
All right. Can you still hear me after all those microphone checks? Perfect. So yeah, the idea, or a little bit to the background of the project, we obviously have our courses and our activities in the courses set up by IDD in a lot of the templates. However, it is a relatively rigid structure. So we were like looking into how can we, as a program on the uncrewed systems program side, as a program, increase the relevance of our activities to the student learning. And one way we figured is if we make it more scenario-based. One drawback of scenario-based is that in order to be relevant, it should be real-world applicable. So the main problem we run into is we only have like these 9 weeks in a course, and we only have like 2 weeks for an activity to get off the ground and get running. So can we maybe get those projects to run over more than one course or interact between 2 different courses? And that was the idea that basically started looking into activity designs that would cross course boundaries, activity boundaries, and then also program boundaries in the long run. Yeah, so we started this process a while ago already, trying to get more industry insights into our programs, but in particular for this innovative teaching portion here, we started this January by redesigning a remote sensing course for remote sensing and analysis course for the graduate degree program. And the idea is to directly design it in a way that allows us to send the students out there, come up with a remote sensing plan, then hand these plans over to students in another course that do their flight planning and take their flight courses with the Department of Flight. These students go out there, fly those missions, and then bring the data back to the students that started the project for further analysis. So those two groups of students start collaborating with each other. And then in the long run, as I said, we're looking into ways of expanding these type of activities across the whole program.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we'll hear a little bit more about that project as we move forward. The next group is Emily Dux Speltz and Alyssa Denaro, who may not be with us right now. But Emily, can you tell us a little bit about your project?
Yeah, absolutely. So my project is addressing this dilemma that we're all having right now of how can we get students to be critical evaluators of generative AI in a classroom context, while also how can we support them in developing AI literacies to be effective users for future jobs that may be requiring them to be effective users of AI. So I have developed an AI ethics course in the Department of Humanities and Communication for Worldwide, and this project is going to be evaluating students as they go through this class in terms of both their self-efficacy when it comes to AI literacies and just their overall ability to make use of functional literacies for being more effective users, critical literacies for being ethical evaluators and critical thinkers with AI, and also creative users, making use of AI in creative ways for their own purposes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll hear a little bit more about that as well. And then, of course, last but not least, we have our College of Business team with Aman Gupta and Michelle Macklin. Aman, can you tell us a little bit about your project?
Absolutely. Okay, got a message hostess. Okay, all right. So can you still hear me?
Yes.
Sounds good. All right. So this project was kind of came into existence because of the type of product we use in our courses in both graduate level and undergraduate level, which is SAP. SAP is a very complex software product. If any of you have ever used SAP, kind of feedback you will provide is, or the words you will use for SAP is frustrating, hard, complex, and students students go through 3 courses at the undergraduate level, and at the graduate level we have optional SAP courses, but the demand of SAP courses is growing. But the challenge we have been facing in our courses is students get introduced to SAP in the very first course, but the next 2 courses are very SAP focused. And the challenge we experience, like Stefan said, that some of the terminology in SAP is very different, which the students are used to because it's a German company. So, and SAP came into existence in 1970, so it has evolved. The product has evolved. So the terminology is a big issue. Students get exposed to the terminology and they're getting used to the terminology, but we want them to use the product along with getting used to the terminology. So what we realized is it was becoming very overwhelming for the students to get a good grasp of how SAP works. And this is based on my experience teaching SAP for last 5 years, and I'm still learning. And when somebody asks me how much SAP I know, the answer I gave is iota. In the last 5 years, I still have just touched the surface. I have not gone in depth. So you can imagine how students get frustrated with the product. So based on our learning about the product, about the exercises, what we realized is we need to break our SAP exercises into smaller parts and give students some hints during the exercises so they understand why they're going through different steps and what's the significance of each step. Another issue what we were facing was students will go through SAP exercise and they may not get an error at step 1, and they'll keep going and they may get an error at step 10. And they can't figure out how to fix that error because they made some mistake at step 1. At step 1, it may not give you an error. So like I said, that's why the feedbacks that comes from students, this is a very frustrating product. It's hard to use, but it is a most widely used product. 90% of the Fortune 500 companies use SAP because it's a powerful product, but still very complex. So we have enhanced the SAP exercises with kind of milestones where students go from one step to another, and then they do some validity check that am I going in the right direction? Or if not, then they need to figure out if they made a mistake in the previous step instead of finding that out 10 steps down. So we have enhanced the exercises, and we have come up with an error log, which lists the kind of errors they can receive and what is the possible resolution of those errors. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And so we have developed a few questions to ask each of the panelists. And so, Aman, since you were just talking, if you wouldn't mind just expanding a little bit more on any of the challenges that you have encountered during the implementation. Again, this was a shorter time frame than what we anticipate in the future. And how did you overcome them, or what is your plan to overcome them?
Sure. So I won't say I've experienced any challenges in implementing these changes, but it took me some time to understand how to add those milestones in the exercises. How should I, what kind of milestones students may need from one step to another. So this is based on going through the exercises and trying to see what students might be thinking after this step and what students should be checking after every step. So putting myself in the shoes of students saying, okay, this is what I'll be thinking as a student. So add a hint or a validation point and saying, check this, make sure, for example, if you have just submitted a purchase request, you have not received any inventory. So inventory should be 0. So make sure you go and check. And if inventory is not 0, there's something wrong. You need to go back and check. We have just incorporated that in one course, which is a March term course, and to just do some pilot testing or pilot run, we have incorporated that in only one section, though we have, I think, 2 or 3 parallel sections of a course. So what we want to do is we want to see what is the difference between the outcome in terms of grades and feedback from the students between one course where they have all these enhancements versus the other section where they don't have those enhancements. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, taking that student perspective can be really challenging, and so I look forward to hearing a little bit more from that. Stefan, you mentioned that you have also experienced some challenges. So can you answer the same question? What challenges have you experienced, and how did you, or how do you plan to overcome them?
Yeah, first off, the whole idea started with prior projects, so it didn't come overnight to me. So we did previously experiment with the realism in our courses, especially in the flight courses, by giving the students, for example, the task before they go out flying, they have to defend their flight plan against an institutional review board, a safety board, basically. So we're taking basically this concept a step further. Now they don't just have to defend it against a pool of faculty, which already increased exposure, and not just get some responses from one faculty, but from multiple faculties or professionals in the field. Now we go a step further, and they now also get basically from the cross-course collaboration peer inputs from students that are not necessarily as involved in the flight itself, but involved in what the product should be. So that was one of the pilot projects. Another pilot project involved allowing students to work on the same project consecutively in their term in 2 different courses. So basically looking at the problem from 2 different sides, from 2 different perspectives. So we give them the same scenario, but in one scenario, they're looking from it from the planning perspective, and the other from the design perspective. And overall, the project gets bigger. So the big logistic things that came out, or the big challenges that came out of it, you obviously have to align those timelines with each other. You can't just put students together into 2 courses and expect them to work. So the activities need to match to each other on the activity timeline in the modules in our courses. There needs to be flexibility in there for unforeseen real-world circumstances. If the weather doesn't cooperate for flights, it just doesn't cooperate. And we need to build in fallback options at various stages of the project. Other things that are important that we haven't addressed yet, buy-in from the faculty that teaches them. They obviously have to coordinate between 2 individual courses, and we may have to overcome some of the restrictions of traditional grading mechanisms in those courses, which we also haven't fully addressed yet and which we further explore. However, in the long run, I think there's a lot of examples of courses where this type of design could benefit. For example, an engineering course partnering with the business course, exploring not just the design of something from the engineering perspective, but also the marketing portion of it from the other perspective. Or a, let me think here. You can probably come up with a lot of examples where a look from 2 different perspectives may benefit the students in the long run to see the value of their project beyond just the course boundaries. And that's really what we're aiming here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are certainly a lot of logistics to consider there. You're talking about traditional structure, you're talking about faculty, you're talking about student experience and grades, and those are all potential barriers, but as you mentioned, also potential opportunities. So thank you so much for sharing that perspective. So we'll move on to the next question that we have, and we'll start actually with Emily. The question here that we have is, Emily, how did you evaluate, or how do you plan to evaluate effectiveness of your instructional strategies?
Yeah, thanks. We'll be taking a few different approaches for my project, with a mixed method approach, I would say. So first, I actually built in a self-efficacy questionnaire as a pre-test and a post-test in this course, just to be part of the course as is, no matter what, since I think it's really helpful for instructors to be able to understand what students are coming into the course with in terms of their AI experience, and then how that's going to proceed throughout the duration of the course and hopefully improve by the end of it. So we'll be looking at that pre and post questionnaire to be able to have a quantitative comparison from the beginning to the end of the course in terms of those self-efficacy measures for the AI literacies that I mentioned before, the functional, critical and ethical, and creative literacies. Then we also get to take a pretty fun qualitative approach using a thematic analysis. So that's where it's been really nice to have the RCTLE team members. I actually have 3 people on my team who are helping me with the thematic analysis part. So for about 10 or so assignments in the course, we're selectively choosing the ones that we think are going to be most interesting to analyze and to look for themes in students' responses, to hopefully again see the development of those different AI literacies in their assignments, and also just try to figure out what other themes are emerging when students are trying to make use of AI ethically, or they're analyzing case studies, or they're putting together AI workflows, anything that we're working on in the course through this very project-based learning approach. We're hoping to be able to better understand what is most effective for students based on the themes that come out, and also just being able to figure out how students are navigating the complexity of when something doesn't have a correct answer, I guess. So sometimes people are kind of confused about ethics when it comes to AI because they want the teacher to tell them what is right and what is wrong. But we're hoping that through this approach with project-based learning, we'll be able to see exactly how they're navigating different philosophical frameworks to be the ones who are making the decisions about what is effective, what is ethical, and what is not ethical.
I love that so much. And that is absolutely what we were hoping for with this innovative teaching grant, with bringing in faculty and staff to be able to kind of look at those varying perspectives, especially on something like a thematic analysis where you might see something and your partners might be seeing something a little bit different. So that's really where that diversity of perspective comes in. So I'd love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, Dr. Michelle Macklin here is going to answer the same question for the work that she's doing with Dr. Gupta.
Well, it's been a really good experience having the ability to really evaluate and look at some of the processes that students experience in the class, and then having those really rigorous discussions with Dr. Gupta. Not having used SAP, I have learned quite a bit about the program and some of the challenges and limitations that our students face when they are going into the courses, and just working with him to try to develop a cohesive plan to ensure that students are successful and that they are able to leave the courses with the necessary and needed skills to be able to apply those in a workplace environment, regardless of where they are. So the experience has been quite beneficial, I believe, for both sides of the equation, just because it has enhanced our ability to collaborate and see a different perspective and really embrace what one another is doing. It brings forward a real respect for one another's roles and positions, and a greater understanding for how we can cohesively collaborate and make sure our students have the best experience here at Riddle.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And so we'll move on to the next question. We're interested in any initial findings from your project so far and how they've contributed to student learning and academic excellence. And so we'll start with Dr. Kleinke with your project.
Yeah, thank you. As I said, we had 2 pilot projects preceding this, and took basically those inputs into our design process. Similarly here, similar to what the other panelists have mentioned, we're not going this alone, but taking basically these different inputs and trying to decide at the program level between the shared department of flight, between the program coordinator for the graduate program, the undergraduate program for uncrewed systems, and me, and taking all these inputs and kind of like applying a modified Delphi design to the process. But the big thing here is student feedback, and the student feedback so far was always positive. When we started increasing realism, they feel more engaged, they see more applicability toward the real world scenarios. And I mean, if we take a step back, it is totally in line what we see there as experiences shared from the students that were able to participate, is totally in line with adult learning theory and constructivism as the founding framework for this project-based learning across courses. The other thing, obviously, a lot of the feedback led us to some of the logistical considerations that I already mentioned before. But one other thing that I wanted to mention here, the big theme is that we want to design basically our activity more learner-centric. So it might not be an approach that fits every student, and that was one conscious decision in there. We still want to build a course that can be taken just by itself by the student if he desires so. But if there are students that want to do these projects, those are the ones that we are targeting and giving them the additional opportunities that they are seeking there. So that was one of the big outcomes, to individualize these type of projects to the student needs and adapt them only when the students want to do them, not dictate them on the students.
Yeah, that's really great. You said so many wonderful things, but the things that kind of stood out to me are the applicability. And that is true for all 3 of these projects. I've heard all 3 project teams talk about the value of being able to apply the skills that they're learning in these experiences, whether it's the project-based, scenario-based, or using a particular tool that they're going to use in their real lives, and that really is so meaningful for our students, and I absolutely contributes to the student learning and just our reputation as leaders in the field of education. So thank you so much. Aman, I'll let you answer the same question. Tell us a little bit about your initial findings and how they contribute to student learning.
Sounds good. So, like I said, we are piloting it in this March term, so not much feedback from students, but certainly the instructor who is using the content in her course, she was very excited to see, especially the error log. And the reason is when the instructors teach this course, the instructors have background in SAP, they've been working in industry, but they have not used SAP in a teaching setting, in a classroom setting. So these things are new for them also. So my hope is that this will be a great enhancement for instructors also. Because if you think about it, this product, when students or instructors who are using this product in the field, they just use one module, at most 2 modules, and there are about 7 or 8 modules what we teach in our courses. So they for example, if you're working in procurement, you may not know anything about accounting, but we teach accounting module also in our. So this will give them, like Michelle used the word cohesiveness. They will be able to see the big picture, that how accounting works and how accounting integrates with procurement, or procurement integrates with production. So so far, feedback from one adjunct has been very positive, especially the error log. She said would save her a lot of time. And my hope as a course developer is that they should be spending more time interacting with students, helping them, instead of spending hours on fixing the errors. So right, with this enhancement, they will have this error log in front of them. They can refer to it and try to solve the problem for students, or they provide the error log to the students. Students try to solve themselves. If not, instructor can help. And this will be like a work in process log all the time, because I'll be updating this error log and provide updates in the course as I build this error log over time.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing I'm hearing there as a theme is efficiency. So efficiency not only in the work that they're doing in the classroom and making sure that they're spending, the students and the faculty are spending time on the things that are most meaningful, but also to be able to, again, apply that to their lives outside of the classroom. It sounds like a really, really useful addition to these courses. Thank you so much for sharing that. So our final panel question will be to Alyssa, and I hope that her mic is working. I see her beautiful face, so I'm guessing it does. So Alyssa, can you tell us how you envision the future of instructional innovation at ERAU, and maybe how these innovative teaching grant projects maybe align with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you can hear me now. I really think that all of these projects, in being so focused on things like project-based learning and experiential learning, are really forward thinking and future focused in themselves. Because if you think about the crises that are facing higher education right now, we have a crisis of public opinion where our students and their parents, lawmakers are wondering, hey, what is the value of higher education right now? How does it apply to the workforce? How does it apply to the skills that students need? And we also have some things like AI causing us to question the very meaning of the way that we assess in education. It's really a bit of an existential crisis. What does it mean to teach if assessment looks so different right now? And if students can delegate portions or all of their thinking or their making to something else, what does it mean to then try and assess their learning? And so really, these projects here, being focused on experiential learning and project-based learning, we're doing assignments that are not only resistant to AI misuse, but it's the broader context of the way that these assignments allow students to practice skills and learn skills that they're going to need in the future, they're going to need in the workplace, and it taps into students' value system and what they want to get out of higher education, which is the ability to practice those skills and feel that connection between what they're doing in the classroom to what they're wanting to do in their futures. And that's really the core of preventing AI misuse. It's not taking a little tip here or installing an app or whatever. It's tapping into what students really value in their education and why they're here in the first place. And I think all of these projects are great examples of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, that's the core of the scholarship of teaching and learning, is really thinking about how meaningful experiences change the lives of students and instructors. And so that's what these projects will do, certainly, for the people that are impacted in the courses that are taking those courses or teaching those courses, but also because the dissemination of these findings is such a big part of the SOTL projects, you're going to be able to influence other people's decision making as well, and their plans moving forward in this, new age of education as well. So thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing your projects, your challenges, as well as some of your successes and some of the plans for the future. Just a quick plug, this was our very first year of our Innovative Teaching Grant, again, funded and supported by the Strategic Initiative teams. And so the call for proposals for next year's Innovative Teaching Grants will be open. They're open now, but they will be sent out to all full-time faculties in your email, just like you got them last year. And this upcoming year will be our first full year. So these guys here, they've been doing this great work only officially since January. And so the Innovative Teaching Grant will actually begin in August, and it will run through June of next year. So look, if you're a full-time faculty member, look for the call for proposals in your emails. And so with that, I think I'll hand it back over to our official moderator, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Angie. We do have some time for questions. So as I mentioned in the chat, hopefully you've been thinking about some questions that you want to ask any of our panelists. So you're welcome to use the text chat to ask those questions, raise your hand if you would like, but we do have about 7 minutes if there are any questions for any of our presenters today. All right, well, they have been stunned into silence with this amazing presentation. So thank you to all of you for your presentation, for sharing this information with us. And thank you to all of our participants who attended this session as well. We hope to see you at one of the next sessions, which begins in about 5 minutes at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget that you'll head back to that lobby link to access the next session. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.